It's
like,
definitely that cliche.
A tip
like,
of the hat to the writing. Like
incredible.
it was,
especially for 13 episodes.
TNMP, the Nerdy Misfit Podcast, with your hosts, Connor O'Neill and Matthew Hughes.
Hello.
Sorry there, Matthew.
Hello.
I made you the mute.
Oh, there we go. Hello, everyone.
I made you the deaf, and I made you the mute. Combination of different issues.
First, I can't listen. Now I can't talk. Anyways, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Nerdy Misfit Podcast.
And we're doing one of our regular episodes, I guess.
Yeah, last Wednesday of the month.
Which means it's the anime of the month. And this month we watched Odd Taxi. Odd Taxi. Yeah, we've been catching up on some shows. I mean, catching up, but also just, watching shows that we haven't seen yet that are popular, if you will.
Yeah.
I had never heard of 91 Days. Obviously, it is decently known, but I'm glad we watched that. You obviously got to watch Haikyuu during this series that we've been doing. For anyone that is interested, we do a different anime every month. You can join the Discord, and you can discuss it with us, and we'll definitely bring your feedback into the episode as that episode airs. This month, obviously, is Odd Taxi, and next month will be Horimiya. So if you wanted that information, you got it now. You can go crank out Horimiya for September.
Exactly. Information about some Odd Taxi. Original air date was April 6, 2021 to June 29, 2021. I have never heard of this anime before we watched it.
All right.
Yeah, episode count 13 episodes. Studio was OLM, mostly known for Pokemon, Komi Can't Communicate, Yokai Watch. Those are like the big three that I could find. Obviously they've done a lot of anime over the years, but those were kind of like the big ones I've seen. My anime list has the genre as mystery,
which is accurate.
Pretty accurate. My anime list score is 8.66 based on 221,088 users.
Yeah, but that's also the algorithm is more than just the average of a rating.
Yeah.
There's a lot more that goes into the
yeah, I mean, it's
score.
Ranked number 71, popularity number 517.
Yeah, it's definitely when it aired, no one was watching it. It was kind of like that sleeper.
Mm-hmm.
And as the season continued, people were like, you need to watch this kind of thing. I did watch like the first 2 episodes when the season was going on, and then it's one of those ones where you're watching so much stuff and you're like, oh yeah, I'll get to it. And then it's on that back burner.
Forever
which is
and
part
ever.
of what makes this series fun.
Yeah.
It's a series where Matt and I can, I don't want to say are forced to, but in a way we have to put time aside to watch an anime, which means at minimum we're watching at least an anime a month.
Exactly.
And also gets the audience involved. You guys can now watch stuff if you have never seen it, as well as you guys can recommend things that maybe is on your plan to watch list and use that as an excuse to also, hey, I want to be involved in that episode. I'll make sure to watch it this month.
Yeah.
So feel free to also recommend stuff. We're totally, as long as it's not something we've both seen, I think we're okay.
And not overly long as well.
Yeah, we've been trying to pretty much anything under 24 episodes is kind of the goal. Preferably, we've been trying to hit those 12 to 13s, which is what Odd Taxi falls into and what Horimiya also falls into.
And 91 Days.
Yeah, we've been on a little bit of a good
mostly
streak.
Just Haikyuu was the big one.
Yeah, and that was only one season, but I actually cranked out all of Haikyuu during that month. But yeah, it's let's get into the nitty gritty, I guess, for Odd Taxi. Do you want to read the synopsis on my anime list?
Eccentric and blunt, the walrus Hiroshi Odokawa lives a relatively normal life. He drives a taxi for a living, and there he meets several unique individuals, i.e. the jobless Kabasawa, who is dead set on going viral, the mysterious nurse Shakurakawa, the struggling comedic duo known as the Homo sapiens, and Dobu, a well-known delinquent. But Odokawa's simple way of life is about to be turned upside down. Because the case of a missing girl the police have been tracking leads back to him, and now both the Yakuza and a duo of corrupt cops are on his tail.
Yeah, so animals are the Anamorphic animals are kind of they're the
humanoids. Yeah,
what we see the characters as, and right away, I mean, like anything like that, you're gonna notice all the different types of animals as you're going through. And one thing I liked about the series was there wasn't that many duplicate animals.
I have that in my notes as well.
Yeah, that everyone was kind of unique. It was, if you're not as good with names, you could almost just be like, oh,
the walrus, the llama,
the giraffe.
the
like
giraffe,
you're just recognizing them by animals, which is interesting because that's how the main character sees things as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's good with quote unquote faces, which kind of relates to the audience as well, because we can just be like, oh, it was the white cat. It was so I did like that.
Really, like, not too many people's names got like mentioned constantly outside of the musicians, like the idols. Like, otherwise it was just like, well, I guess
Homo sapiens, I guess, as a group were mentioned a good amount.
But yeah, I think for me too, like, I noticed that like it was nice to see all different animals, because I feel like in some of these TV shows, when you're following characters that are the anthropomorphic, human, animal, whatever, sometimes the background characters are all the kind of same.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like even watching this, I didn't notice like a big group of just giraffes or like a big group of like a particular species of animals in the background. Like, it still felt like it was...
The cats were the only thing that there was
more than one of
majority of, and one of which were very similar on purpose.
Yeah.
Because it was a replacement, if you will. But so initial thoughts. I thought the first few episodes were a little slower, but like most shows, you're kind of you're learning who the cast is, who the characters are. And something that this series does well is that no one is introduced for no reason.
Mm-hmm. Though it feels like it at the beginning.
At the beginning, it feels like it, but that's the one thing the series does extremely well. The writer definitely had everything figured out, and no stone is left unturned, which is really nice. There's no like, oh, yep, this could be a plot point. Oh, yeah, this could be a plot point. No, it just... If it was there, it's a plot. Yeah. Like, it's part of the plot, and it will get explained at some point during the series.
Well, even like right down to him listening to the radio.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, that was important, you know?
What about you? What were some of your initial thoughts when you started her up?
I mean, all the characters look unique. I did have a similar feel where, like, there was part of the first episode where I was like, okay, we've established that there's a girl that's gone missing, and they were last seen in a taxi. But outside of that, the first episode or two kind of felt very slice of lifey, in the sense that it was like a slow pace. You're like, okay, this guy's just a taxi driver, and
following him along.
Has some friends that he goes to occasionally. One of them is in the like a health profession. Okay, cool.
Yep.
But then it's like episode 3 hits, and you're like, oh, these characters are
episode
reoccurring.
4 was the craziest.
Episode 4 is when it really shifted.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh wait, is the walrus not the main character?
He was definitely the main character.
Well, he was, yeah. But like when you have like it's for an anime that's only 13 episodes, I feel like when you have
every side character having an impact, makes it. Yeah, I see where you're.
And even when episode 4 was totally like not from the walrus's point of view.
Yeah, you get a backstory of another character within the world we've already seen. Art style and character design, I thought it was clean, simple. Like we mentioned, since each character is a different animal, very easy to differentiate them. And overall, I enjoyed it. I thought easy to follow along, even though some of the plot maybe got not confusing, but obviously it's a mystery, so it's trying to, put you in a different direction and get you off the trail, if you will.
I mean, same, yeah. I thought all characters looked great, and it was nice to see no repeat designs of anyone. I say that because you have the twins, obviously.
Yeah,
but even so, one of them was wearing glasses, one of them wasn't, which is obviously just a small...
I also thought that the twins were interesting because of their duality. They grew up in the same conditions, same tragic event happened to both of them, and they both become police officers, but they kind of end up taking different paths at that point.
Yeah, it's a yin-yang situation.
Exactly, and I kind of like the duality of them. Animation was totally fine. Solid. Nothing egregious, nothing that really you could pinpoint and be like, ew, or I guess if you really wanted to be a stickler, like the cars and obviously the main taxi you follow is a CGI taxi. but really it doesn't take away from the show at all. So it's irrelevant.
That's exactly what I have. Minus the CGI cars from time to time, but it doesn't take away from the show. I think the animation fit the vibe of the show. It wasn't too extreme in any way.
Yeah, and speaking of fitting the show, the OST was perfect.
Oh, what a freaking great tune.
Like it felt like during the kind of like awkward or like, cringe moments, there was like an appropriate music playing. During the high suspense moments, everything was getting you in the right mood for the situation.
The music
within the
helped
show.
tell the story easily.
There wasn't like high lyrical music. It was all very much just the beeps and the boops, if you will.
Yeah.
Instrumental stuff, but it all fit perfectly, I felt.
In the opening and like the outro, like intro and outro were both great. The intro I watched the music video for, and it's really
the
fun.
Intro had a lot of also details that were within the show. Like if you watch the actual visuals, a lot of the visuals tell its own story of the world and the characters that we have all met within the show, which was, it's nice to see in openings, the detail that goes into it, stuff like that. I also find that sometimes it can be a little bit spoiler, but I felt like Odd Taxi did a good job of making it.
Once you knew, you knew. It was almost
exactly.
like an Easter egg
when things got
kind
revealed,
of thing.
You're like, oh, now you're starting to notice it. It's stuff in the opening, but unless you're hardcore with breaking down the opening, you weren't really getting spoiled for anything.
Yeah.
Moving on to the plot and characters, which is, in my opinion, the strongest part of the show.
Yeah.
The plot, I do feel like there were times where the mystery kind of fell to the wayside and didn't feel like it was important anymore. Until kind of those last three
episodes.
And then all of a sudden, it was important again.
Yeah.
That little lull period in the middle where there was a lot of great stuff, a lot of character backstories that kind of, in all honesty, were unexpected. You were kind of like blown. Some of the characters, you were just like, "Oh, okay, oh, okay,
You're like,
sure."
all right, that we're going with that. Okay.
But I do feel like as the mystery, losing the actual mystery kind of brings you out of it a bit.
Yeah.
Like you said, then you're starting to go into this, not so much even slice of life, but just drama in general. You're just following these characters and the ups and downs of their life.
That's where it kind of felt like slice of life. It was like a slice of life mystery almost, but not like.
I would say it's more of a drama because slice of life is just everyday following, whereas obviously we were getting like significant backstories.
That's true.
Where like the drama element feels more appropriate. But that's probably like my one nitpick, because overall the plot was still solid in terms of when we were talking about the mystery, and when we were getting those backstories, it was to help build towards why the character went missing, what happened to the character, why it happened to the character, why other characters ended up getting involved. Like, it did end up just all making sense.
Yeah.
Like, perfectly. And that brings us on to the characters, which are easily the thing that carries this show. I made a list, and can't go through all of them because all of the characters had moments, obviously, but I guess let's highlight some of the big ones here.
I mean, obviously Otokawa, the main guy, the walrus.
Yeah.
It's just interesting because obviously he's just a taxi driver. That is his entire.
Not even just a taxi. He's a taxi driver who like kind of doesn't give a crap, if you will, about people think, what's going on. Kind of about himself. He's just very nonchalant, and like he calls people out on their crap. That's kind of what you learn on early on, where he's like, "That's stupid. Why would you want that?" And
AKA right off the bat, where the internet sensation character wants to take a picture with him. He's like, "I don't care."
Kabasawa.
Yeah.
He's just like, that seems dumb, and he just kind of puts him in his place, and that is both. Gives some comedic element to the main character, but is also relatable in some ways, because sometimes that is just how you feel.
Yeah.
Someone else can be like the happiest go lucky person, and you're just kind of like, what are you so happy about? That's just how some people are. So, and it's cool to see it from the taxi perspective, considering, a taxi would probably see, not on purpose, but probably get a lot of info from just random people that would be in their taxi cab.
Exactly.
and just learning about what's going on via driving people around. It's kind of a clever use of the main character and the job of the main character to be like, hey, how can I connect people to this character? Oh,
yeah,
they all need a taxi every now and then. They happen to get in his taxi.
You made the taxi the location to help tell the story, essentially.
Moving on to probably my least favorite character, but still impactful in ways.
Yeah, the janitor.
Kakihana, which is Odokawa's friend, who's a monkey. And his whole shtick is he wants to get married. He's a single bachelor. And he ends up lying on his dating profile about, perhaps he makes a little bit more money than he actually does. And this is the start of what felt very real in the series. This is something that happens in real life.
All the time.
Whether it's catfishing or just in general beefing up your profile to make it look more impressive,
yep.
or just straight up lying about who you are and how much you make and whatnot. And he ends up taking out a loan to go on these dates with this pretty girl who we the audience know is one of the members of the band
group,
the idol group. And he ends up taking enough debt out to also buy a ring. I don't know what his plan was, if he proposed and then she would obviously figure out he's not wealthy.
Yeah.
So he didn't really think things through, which is kind of what made him too dumb for me.
Yeah.
But it did feel realistic that someone would get into debt for something like this to have the appearance, if you will, of
when you go so
wealth.
far into the lie, right? It just becomes your reality.
And this ends up getting him in big trouble with loan sharks, and that's how kind of he ends up getting brought into the gang shenanigans that have been going on in the series. The doctor, Goruki, I think that's how his name said. I didn't find him to be overly... He was probably one of the weaker characters for me. He didn't really impact a lot of things. He kind of was this tool within the story to uncover things about the main character for us.
Yeah, he was kind of from our point of view. Like, he was a supporting character that was helping the overarching story make sense of who the main character was.
What was going on with the main character, what issues he may have, why he's trying to help him, what's going on with him. He played that role well, like he was written well for that. He just didn't feel like he heavily impacted the mystery elements of the story.
Yeah, he wasn't directly connected to it, really. So
moving on to someone who was one of the nurses that worked within this doctor's office, which was Shirakawa, and they were involved with what I would say is kind of the main gangster of the story, which is Dobu.
Yeah.
And then she ends up stealing drugs and ends up basically in this toxic relationship of she owes him money, but he has put such a large interest rate on that money she owes that she's basically stuck permanently stealing drugs for him to try and pay her debts. She's a very nice character. We first get introduced where she very classically is set up to kind of spy on the main character, but then ends up learning about him and falling for him and liking him as an actual person as opposed to just being used to go spy on him.
Yeah.
Other than that, she did have a couple saving moments, both in fighting and saving in terms, I guess, also breaking car windows with her fighting ability.
Yeah.
Then we have Dobu, who's like we said, gang member willing to do anything to make money for the boss, and is kind of the central point of who everyone's after, and is I guess, the number one suspect for the missing character.
Yeah.
The missing teen. And we do learn that Dobu is not who's responsible, but he's kind of an epicenter for a lot of what ends up happening around the other characters. And he obviously gets heavily involved with the main character in using him to further his wealth for his boss, if you will. Then we go on to Kabasawa, which is the character in the first episode who just wants to go viral, just wants to become internet famous. Can't relate personally.
Definitely
and
not. No.
I'm sure a ton of people can't relate.
But are you following? Are you following our YouTube? Are you following?
Yeah, this is a good good.
Are you in the Discord?
Make sure to
are
hit
you
the
guys
subscribe
in
button
yeah,
if you're on
Are you
YouTube.
gonna like
follow
it?
on if you're listening on any podcast platform.
yeah,
Wink,
not
nudge,
relatable.
nudge.
Sorry. So Kabasawa, like you said, he ends up doing anything to achieve the goal, and then he gets viral, and then he begins to spiral.
He can't handle a lot of the hate he's getting. To be fair, he's also put on a very fake persona that he can't really live up to. And that just felt very real. I feel like that's very common, especially for people who get internet famous way faster. The fame just instantly comes and then they just can't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
So that felt very relatable. We go on to Yamamoto, which is the idol manager, who ends up getting looped into gang activities via Yano, who's a separate gang member for the same gang boss, but competes heavily with Dobu to see who can make the most money for the boss. And basically, obviously, like we said, this is very spoiler heavy because we're doing a full spoiler review of this. So I will go into the big thing now. So if you've somehow made it this far and don't want to be spoiled, I'll give you 3, 2, 1. Yano is paid to get rid of the bodies by Yamamoto, and in doing so, also makes a deal with Yamamoto that a good chunk of the money that the idols make will be going to him, and that the girls that are part of the idol group will also be used in any of their schemes to help make money. And this brings a good chunk of the group together.
Yeah.
Because one, we're learning that Yamamoto is not responsible for the death of the missing girl, but is responsible for not reporting it, along with one of the other idols, and then brings in Yano, and this kind of starts connecting all these threads.
Yeah.
Right? When we get those episodes. The Diamond Brothers we did mention. We have the twin cops. One of them ends up being more corrupt. The other one is all about justice.
Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of that, they're pretty simple in that way.
And really, obviously the idols are super important, but I think the last character we can really talk about is just Tanaka,
who kind of comes out of the blue in terms of we hadn't really seen him and there was no care, and then all of a sudden we get this massive, kind of depressing
but
backstory.
Also relatable in a way.
Very relatable, not just in terms of wanting to fit in at school, but also just addiction and gacha games and potential addiction to games in general. Tanaka comes in as a character who just wants to fit in at school. He's not attractive, he's not athletic, so he's not going to be in that upper echelon. But at his school, there was this thing for erasers, and if you had cool erasers, that was the way to get in to the cool if you didn't have the other stuff. And he's competing with another classmate whose parents get him all these cool rare erasers. And he's like, screw this, I'm going to get a rare eraser. And he ends up stealing his dad's credit card and ridiculously bidding on an eraser for 100,000 yen, and then gets ripped off because that person never actually sends the eraser. So not only does his dad find out, gets beat up, obviously is depressed because now also the eraser thing is over. No one cares about erasers after 4 months or whatever.
Yeah.
But he then gets into a gacha game. And the gacha game just kind of becomes his personality. He's on it every day. It shows him on it at work, where it's distracting him from being able to participate in real life. And he's been playing this game, I think it was something like 4 years, maybe?
There's something crazy like that, yeah.
And he ends up finally getting the dodo bird in this game, which is actually what he's been hunting for all these years. And the taxi almost runs him over, and he loses his phone and loses the data of the dodo bird, causing him to just lose it. Crack, snap, pop.
Gotta find the taxi. Gotta find the taxi driver and kill him.
He becomes a bit unhinged all of a sudden, and he is hunting our main character for revenge because he lost his dodo bird. Now, obviously, that's a
bit extreme.
It's a bit. It's definitely on the extreme end, but we've seen some pretty horrible things happen for less in this world that have set people off.
True.
And I just think it shows the how addiction in real life, like people are addicted to gacha games in real life, are in financial ruin for gacha games in real life, and have ruined their lives or have allowed a game to take over their life, whether that's relationships, at work, socially, etc. Like it was almost too real in a scary way.
Yeah, I agree.
And it was like you mentioned earlier in this episode is the first episode when we watch where you're just like, you have to like take a step back. And
that's
like,
really
whoa.
when it kicked in, where I'm like, okay, this isn't like as slice of lifey as it feels, you know.
And there are a lot of other characters, but I feel like that was probably the big one that ended up having such a large impact on the story. At least like how you, like you said, like how you've seen the story at that point.
Yeah.
And from that point on, we start getting backstories of other characters, and that's how all the threads start getting woven into this, you know, spider web, if you will, with the epicenter being our taxi driver and how he relates to Tanaka, and how then Tanaka's connected to Dobu because it's Dobu's gun that he has, and then obviously Dobu's connected to Shirakawa and everyone else, and it's
and
just
he's in competition with Yano, who is
everyone's
the one that's
connected
to this, which is connected.
You can probably draw a pretty incredible map of how
there's a couple on
how the characters end up getting, even if they've never met, how what they've done affects that other person, which is
I'll throw a picture up right here to show everyone.
Which is remarkable. It is definitely.
It's
like
definitely that cliche.
A tip of the hat to the writing, like
incredible.
It was,
especially for 13 episodes, getting all
it just
characters
got more and more satisfying.
Yeah.
As you went on, especially from I'd say 4 to that 8 or 9 mark, like seeing how all these things were starting to really come together. It was an extremely satisfying.
I think
show.
episode 4 was the first episode where it got like more serious, and then as soon as the one character is about to like propose and then gets kidnapped, and then that's when we fully get introduced to Yano. I think that's the next like big like boom. Like,
not to mention when we get introduced to Yano, it starts with our main character bumping into him when he's on a scooter.
Yeah, and he just
starts
rapping away, and you're like,
this guy's weird. And then all of a sudden he happens to be
the other crime boss, basically.
Yeah, the other big gang member.
Yeah.
Who, in all honesty, is doing a lot worse stuff than it felt like.
Yeah.
than Dobu was doing. In terms of he was running the scheme with the idol to try and basically find rich people to steal from them.
Yeah.
Obviously also hiding bodies, which is not great.
Awkward.
Yeah, but
going into like positives, I mean, I can read my little blurb here.
Yeah, go ahead.
Got overall solid story. What felt like a slow build up to an overarching finale of the season. What I felt started off as more of an episodic show. It felt more interesting by the end. Every character that came into the taxi or even briefly seen played a part in the story. Because even like in the first episode, when he gets stopped by the cops, like you don't think that the cops are gonna play like
as big of a role as they do.
Exactly. Yeah.
But even the snarkiness of the corrupt cop already kind of antagonizing our main character is because he already knew.
Yeah, he already knew, which is crazy.
He already knew stuff, and he was like kind of playing into it already. For me, I said similarly, things I really liked about the series: everything had a purpose, no stone left unturned, no introduction or potential story plot left unused.
Agreed.
And then in brackets I put complete opposite of The Last Jedi. Right? You think of everything that was set up and I hate to bring up Star Wars, but it's just so easy to attack in terms of episode 7 had all these interesting plots that were set up. And I feel like as there's our Star Wars fans who wouldn't even care if all of them were technically finished, but just if one of them was taken.
Yeah.
Where episode 8 killed them all.
Literally
and
killed one of them and destroyed the rest. Yeah.
Left nothing for 9, and it's like Odd Taxi does the exact opposite, where nothing is introduced without a reason. And even though some
Agreed.
of them maybe takes a little bit longer for the payoff, it just means the payoff was even more worth it.
Yes, I agree.
When that happens. Obviously, one of the biggest things was the ending.
Yeah,
where
I wasn't sure if we were going to talk about that quite yet, but
I mean,
I know where. Yeah, so like, I literally have the last 3 episodes really brought the story together, because I didn't know how the show was going to end, other than like the solving of the murder. So for me, the last episode was a bit of a plot twist.
Yep.
Because I was like, I didn't expect that at all. I mean, when you have your main character drive off a bridge in the taxi by himself in slow motion,
and see every character
we've seen was like, oh no.
They all see the taxi.
Yeah, and you're like, what the heck is going on? And then obviously the love interest in quotations comes down, saves him, and then he's in the hospital, and then he wakes up and he's a human.
Well, at this point there was already heavy hints to him seeing things differently. I did read a couple of different things that discussed that if you pay heavily attention in some of the early episodes, you can definitely pick up on that. There is something going on that potentially they're not animals, because the animals are never referenced. I think it's referenced once by Otokawa, once or twice to people, and he says, I think he says it to the love interest. What is she? She's like an alpaca.
Yeah.
I think he mentions that, like, what's an alpaca like doing or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
And she kind of like is weird about it and shrugs it off. But I think that's because we, the audience, are supposed to be like, oh, that's normal. Like, they understand that from him being normal.
Yeah.
And so there are little hints throughout the series that kind of hint at Otokawa. And the biggest one was, I have a way of remembering people. And that's because he sees them as animals.
Mm-hmm.
He sees everyone as a different animal. Hence why he's good. Once he says, I've seen their face, I can pick them out. And so Otokawa ends up having a tragic accident where his mother, who's been getting cheated on by her drunk husband, basically goes family suicide. And this accident is what caused Otokawa to then start seeing people as animals. He already had difficulty with social interaction in general.
Yeah.
And it's called visual agnosia, something like that, which was his sight impairment to see them as everyone as animals. And then he has a similar style accident at the end where he goes off a bridge into the water and kind of, if you will, reverses it. Resets it. And he starts seeing everyone as human. The funny thing is, everyone's pretty close to their animal counterpart. I thought that was great.
Yeah. Like, I thought that was really done in the animation style of, like, right down to the doctor, where his beard is just, like, in reference to the monkey that he was, and even, like, the way the love interest, she was always wearing white, and, like, she always had her, like, a scarf or something.
The guy that was
around
obsessed with the idol group looked very similar. So that was
even the idols themselves, like, it was weird.
I really liked that. And it was a nice twist at the end if you weren't picking up on all the little things.
I was blindsided by it, to be honest.
And it was just no one else. They wasn't actually animals. They were just people. The thing that I loved was we see the main character talking in his room by himself. And obviously this is on purpose to make you think that he potentially has this girl with him. And it's just a cat.
I thought that was great.
Which made sense because the way he talks to it earlier, he's like, oh, you just kind of showed up and, like, what are you expecting me to do? Are you hungry? Like, do you want me to feed you? Making it seem like it could be this girl.
Could be the girl that's been missing.
But also, a stray cat makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. I just find it funny as one of the final lines is like, oh, okay, you're just a cat.
Yeah, because he didn't, he was confused because at the hospital where they're like, who are you talking to? And he's like,
about that.
Let me get back to you.
Yeah, I need to go check up on something.
But yeah, it was a very well done series overall. I can't even remember the last thing I've watched that had such, I don't want to say overly complicated, but well done writing with kind of everything.
Yeah.
It would be something that, and obviously we mention it often, is One Piece, but this is not over 1,100 chapters.
No, I think what this is that it didn't leave me wanting, like, one more episode or 10 more minutes of something. Like, there's no, like, with 91 Days, like, if there was another episode,
you'd watch it.
It would fill in a couple extra small gaps, right?
I see what you're saying. There's not I think the only thing I have issues with Odd Taxi is the justice did not feel like it got completely fulfilled for the responsible party for the murder. That's probably the only unsatisfying thing. But just like real life, sometimes that's what happens.
Exactly.
So, and I guess I'll ask you, did you have any predictions of who the murderer / kidnapper was? Okay, so I thought it was the lead idol girl.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously we learn she would have.
She was about to. She wanted to.
She wanted to, but someone
beat
her to it. And once she was beaten to it, I did have my suspicions that it was the person who took over the spot. It wasn't an overly complex mystery as a whole. If you've seen any CSI, Criminal Minds, any of those,
they always put themselves into the investigation.
It was a pretty
style.
obvious, like cliche. Oh, okay, someone else killed them so that they could get that part.
Yeah,
which is definitely, I mean, it's a motive.
It's a
classic motive, but just not an out there character to it's just you get distracted by all the other elements going on through the story that you're not as focused on like who it could be, especially since there's a lot of flashing lights like, oh, over here it's this person, or obviously the bait of Otokawa talking to things and being like, he is kind of sus at some points, like, and well,
that's the thing is like they at the first couple of episodes when you get introduced to Arakawa, he like they almost reference that he has a dark past of some reason. Like, why are you a taxi driver? Like, he's like, well, I just remember people's faces.
The best is his backstory when he's like, he has like his dream jobs, and one of them is, hey, it'd be kind of cool to drive people around.
Yeah.
He's living his dream.
Exactly. Negatives, nothing really to report on the counter. Again, if I was nitpicky, I'd be like, well, the CGI in the cars were. But again, it didn't take away from the story.
Didn't take away from the story, so I don't feel like. And also, vehicles are a very common thing done. So
yeah, it's funny. Anytime we talk about like CGI, I always think back to when like 4 or 5 years ago, even we were hanging out and we were watching. This is when we were both intrigued by Seven Deadly Sins before they switched animation studios, and we watched like the filler movie. And there was like that giant ship, and it was like one of the worst CGI vehicles I've seen.
I've watched some pretty bad CGI stuff now.
I think of like bigger animations, like bigger stories and stuff. But I always think back to that.
Some clips from the one isekai I've seen. It's got some pretty horrific stuff in it. But yeah, overall, the negatives, I felt like maybe some of the pacing could have been adjusted slightly to feel a little bit smoother, but
also kind of built it up almost. So when those faster bits happen, you're like, oh, okay, we're back to the.
But I would say I enjoyed it. Final thoughts and recommendations. Great series. Short and sweet. Easy to crank through for sure. Easy entry into your My Anime list if that's what you care about. Definitely would recommend. 100%. Rating wise,
where do you put it?
Man, it's one of those ones where I kind of want to put it 0.5. I'm stuck at 8.5 ish. On my Mal, I did give it an 8.
Okay.
But I think I would potentially put it at an 8.5 if I could.
I think My Anime list has it pretty set with like an 8.66. That's like obviously
it feels like it's in a comfortable, like it's in a good spot.
Yeah.
It's also unique to find a story that's contained in those 13 eps. So well done.
This also like was an anime original, right? Like it wasn't based off a manga, right? I think the manga came out after, or was it?
Yeah, I believe you're correct. I believe the manga did come out after. I'm not 100% sure.
And there is also a movie, right?
Yeah, but I think the movie has a lot of it's like there's a lot of good chunk of it's a recap. I'm not too sure if there's more to it or not. Haven't looked super in depth on that stuff.
Yeah, just kind of reading the description, just like a high school girl vanished, triggering an unpredictable series of events. So it almost sounds like it's just the show
in a movie format.
Yeah. I think it is 2 hours though. So I mean, but
yeah. So the manga came out after the anime.
Okay.
But and I remember watching someone's discussing it, and that the writer had no credits originally. Like it was just so it had to be like a upcoming writer to help to write the series. But they did a fantastic job.
I mean, I would recommend it to a casual viewer of anime. Like it's like you said, it's 13 episodes. It's not too complex,
and it's also not very heavy on any anime trope content that usually pushes people out. No risque anything. No weird.
In comparison to Beastars, it's nothing. You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely compared to Beastars. There's no sus scenes. Just a mystery with some very interesting characters.
Easy peasy.
With that said, Horimiya is going to be the next series we watch. So we'll be jumping into the world of romance.
Yeah, we've yet to do a hardcore shonen yet. So
we haven't done a battle shonen. We have done a hardcore shonen in terms of Haikyuu, which is an extreme
battle shonen. Anytime I think of hardcore shonen, I always think of battle shonens.
Yes, but a lot of battle shonen are long.
It's true. That is the thing. We need to find one that's not too bad.
So,
if you guys have any recommendations, let us know. We got 3 more months of the anime of the month before we make the big decision if we're doing it next year, which we probably will. Yeah. But yeah, Horimiya. Do you want me to read the?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. On the surface, the thought of I'm gonna butcher these names.
We got a lot of Japanese names in this series, so
boy.
Please.
On the surface, the thought of Kyoyuku Hori and Uzumi Miyamura.
Horimiya.
That makes sense. Getting along would be the last thing in people's minds. After all, Hori has a perfect combination of beauty and brains, while Miyamura appears meek and distant to his fellow classmates. However, a fateful meeting between the two lays both of them hidden selves bare. Even though she is popular at school, Hori has little time to socialize with her friends due to housework. On the other hand, Miyamura lives under the noses of his peers, his body bearing secret tattoos and piercings that make him look like a gentle delinquent. Ooh.
Oh.
Having opposite personalities yet sharing odd similarities, the two quickly become friends and often spend time together in Hori's home. As they both emerge from their shells, they share with each other a side of themselves concealed from the outside world.
Yep. So this is a story.
Just sounds cliche as heck.
This is by Cloverworks, and this is currently one of the if you were to ask people a top romance, this is up there.
This is it, eh?
This is high on people's boards of fantastic romance. So we haven't done a very classic romance, so this is what we'll be diving into this month. Perhaps with your recommendations, maybe we do a battle shonen for October, or maybe we find something that might be Halloween themed.
Ooh, that'd be good.
So we'll see what we end up doing, but please join us for Horimiya. Link in the description to our Discord and the link tree, and there's a role page where you can join the role and join us in the anime of the month. And feel free to message us, message anyone else, join our other social medias, Instagram, Twitter, and of course, subscribe on YouTube, ring the bell notification to get notified whenever we post a new video and or short. Those come out very sporadically.
There's just keep an eye on those because those pop up a lot.
Oh yeah, randomly, they pop up very randomly.
Very randomly.
But new podcast every Wednesday. Tune in next week.
What are we going to be chatting about next week? I don't know yet.
I'm sure it's on our list.
Yeah, we got a list. Stay tuned for that. We only got 4 months left of the year.
Crazy.
Which is crazy to think about, but
I couldn't believe how fast August went.
Yeah, August is a blur.
Like, July was nice, and then August was just gone.
I think you came back from your trip, and then it was just like...
It's already over.
You're like, okay, well, September's next week. Cool. I think it's weird because, like, we obviously used to work in the tourism, so it's very different for our lives now.
This is very peak time right now.
Very peak time. This is we're coming up on a year of me not being there, which is crazy.
For you, buddy.
So thanks, man.
Trying to get some friends out of it.
Exactly. But until then, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, et cetera, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Goodbye.
Bye.
TNMP, the Nerdy Misfit Podcast. Don't forget to join the island by dropping a follow. Thank you, and see you next week.